Hello and welcome. I'm Ali Mustafa and you're watching a special edition of Strait Talk. It's been a week of fighting between the Free Syrian Army backed by Turkish armed forces and the YPG terror group in Syria's Afrin region. The fiercest clashes have been reported near the Bursaya mountains, including Hammam village. The violence has also spilled into Turkey, with a YPG rocket fired from Afrin killing at least 2 civilians earlier this week in Kilis. The Turkish military says it has killed at least 340 YPG militants. So how does this latest offensive fit into the bigger picture? Well, the Syrian conflict began in 2011. Since then, an estimated 400,000 Syrians have been killed. An estimated 5 million refugees have fled abroad, of which 3.5 million are in Turkey. More than 6 million Syrians are internally displaced, with many having fled to opposition-held areas along Turkey's border. Alongside the Russia and Iran-backed Assad regime, US-backed YPG militants control a majority of Syria's landmass. For the Turkish-backed opposition, the Free Syrian Army, the fight against the YPG is personal, as Courtney Keeley reports.
Turkish soldiers, aided by thousands of opposition fighters from the Free Syrian Army, continue their ground offensive through this northwestern corner of Syria. Their aim is to rid the YPG militants affiliated with the PKK from the Afrin region. Called Operation Olive Branch, the fighting continues through days of fog and rain and thick mud, an apt metaphor for the complexities of shifting alliances, often clouding the Syrian conflict.
What's happening in Syria is a competition between regional and international powers.
Mustafa Sajari, a commander and senior official in the Free Syrian Army, recently traveled to Washington, D.C. to urge U.S. officials to restart a CIA program to arm and train the Free Syrian Army.
Everyone is feeling the chaos that is going on in the Trump administration. They are not providing any real support to Syria, and there is no real role for them in the Syrian people's lives right now. They need to change their policy and communicate and work with Turkey and other people in the region. They cannot separate what's going on in Afrin from the bigger Syrian picture.
Ignoring demands from both the Turkish government and Syrian opposition, U.S. President Trump's administration canceled the CIA program last summer. Instead, it deepened ties to the YPG under the umbrella group the Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, to fight Daesh strongholds in Syria like Raqqa.
As the YPG fought Daesh with American weapons and training, it also claimed more territory along the Turkish-Syrian border. And when the U.S. announced it would stand up a border force of about 30,000 troops, which would be mainly YPG militants, Turkey had enough.
Our fight is not against the Kurdish people. Our fight is against these terrorists who don't view themselves as Syrian. Our fight is against these terrorists. The Kurdish people and the other people who are under the control of the PKK and YPG in these areas, they are suffering under them. Among the people that we have captured from the YPG in Afrin, there are many of them who are under 18 years old, and they are telling us that they were forced to join the fight.
Ruslan defected from the Syrian Air Force in 2012 after the Assad regime ordered its pilots to launch airstrikes on Syrian citizens.
After I defected, the regime continued to try to get me. My house was targeted and my son was injured. He recovered and is fighting with me now in Operation Olive Branch.
The U.S. and Russia have both called for restraint. Meanwhile, President Erdogan has said the operation could extend to Manbij, east of Aleppo. The situation remains tense, with fears high that a move into Manbij could bring U.S. troops and Turkish forces, NATO allies, into direct conflict. Courtney Keeley, Strait Talk.
And to discuss this further, I'm joined in the studio by Ozden Zeynep Octav. She's a professor at Istanbul Medeniyet University. She's also the author of Limits of Relations with the West, Turkey, Syria and Iran. And we also have a very own Haka Ojal. He's a journalist who writes often for Daily Sabah and a lecturer at Bahçeşehir University. Let's begin with you, Zeynep. The bigger question now, as we move beyond Afrin, Afrin's still in play, but now we're getting a lot of comments coming from the US that Turkish forces have to be careful about US forces in Manbij. Tell us about this dynamic that is opening up. There are two fronts here.
Yeah. Manbij is very sensitive place for United States. It is in the eastern part of Euphrates. If you look at the map, you easily see that the place beginning with Jarablus until Iraq, there is a big territory of 400 kilometers, and this place is currently controlled by the YPG under the control of United States and the coalition forces as well. And Turkey openly gave the message that Syrian operations are open-ended. Ibrahim Kalın gave this message very recently, and Turkey does not want to limit this operation until the Jarablus. They are planning, as far as I see, to go beyond the Jarablus. This is a big territory towards the south part of Syria. It includes Kobani and Jezire, and this is a big territory.
These are the YPG cantons.
YPG cantons, as you mentioned.
Just want to open it up. You mentioned Jarablus, we're mentioning Manbij. Manbij was the focus during Operation Euphrates Shield. One of the key demands for the Turks was that all YPG forces or SDF forces have to move east of the Euphrates. This happened in Jarablus, but it didn't happen in Manbij. But then the Turkish forces, instead of moving directly to Manbij, started moving further west. They went to Dabek, they went to Azaz, and that corridor was opened up with Al-Bab as well. So why Manbij and why now? Why wasn't Manbij focused on earlier in Operation Euphrates Shield? Why is it coming up now?
We have to visualize that Turkey has drawn a wedge to this series of cantons on the border. I mean, the aim of those things was to shield Turkey off the Arab lands. Also, it had this mentality behind it that it could serve as a pipeline, a new passage for the pipeline for the West. But that is some other issue. But it was sealing Turkey off from Arabs. That was not acceptable. Second, you are
But how could they have succeeded in cutting a wedge or driving a wedge between Arab lands and Turkey? If you look at the map, most of these areas east of the Euphrates are controlled by the YPG, and these are historically Arab areas.
Then, when Turkey was doing the Manbij operation, there was no U.S. military help or assistance, arms going all the way to the cantons. Then, only if you were going to have only political presence there, Turkey could accept that, because that kind of thing could be solved in a political process, in a conference or somewhere. But United States changed the game. They started providing arms, arming those cantons on the east of Euphrates.
They changed the game, you say, and I want to bring this in for our viewers as well, how the YPG expanded since 2011, when the Syrian conflict started. It started from Qamishli as a rebellion in this Kurdish majority city, but with covert US support, the YPG in 2012 took over Kobane, Afrin, Al-Bab. Then in 2014, with the help of the US support, it retook Kobane from Daesh. In 2015, it re-established itself as the SDF, supported by US fighter jets. And in 2016, with US support, it took over Raqqa and Manbij, where they put up pictures of Abdullah Öcalan very visibly. But still, the US is in denial to a large extent. I want to bring Zainab here. The US says that there is no connection between the YPG and the PKK. They still insist. Some of the generals earlier, Ash Carter, Defense Secretary under Obama, said there are connections. And this is obvious. The YPG itself is saying there are connections. So why is the US not convinced?
What is the evidence of this? I cannot really understand why they allege that there is no connection between YPG and PKK. The members of the YPG and the leaders of PYD openly says that they are PKK affiliated. PKK affiliated group, PEJAK, also is very active in Iran. And also, this is the Syrian branch of PKK.
And in Iraq, you have PKK offshoots as well.
Of course.
Before I bring this to you, I want to just bring in a statement coming from the Pentagon, where the U.S. Army Joint Staff Director, Lieutenant General Kenneth McKenzie, answering a question about Turkey's legitimate concerns, says that we, the US, also recognize Turkey has a legitimate national security interest and they're very close to the problem. They're the only NATO ally that actually has an active insurgency operating on their own territory. So we understand all of these things. They have an understanding, but there seems to be something missing.
But they are speaking from the both sides of their mouth. I mean, that's what they are doing. I mean, there is this political vacuum at the top. You have a president there who is not paying attention to anything said to him. It is actually a symptom of the narcissistic personality disorder, if I may say so, because he's not listening. If he acts as if he is listening, he's not hearing. I mean, Turkish president explained him that all 1,350 kilometers of the border is now unsecure. As we speak, bombs are falling on Turkish towns right now. I mean, yesterday, one of the bombs came to a mosque during the prayer time. I mean,
In Kilis.
in Kilis. I mean, then if you are legitimately concerned about Turkish concerns, Turkish security issues, or their lack of, you have to do something. First thing you need to do, as the United States, is, as you promised, first of all, let us create this safe zone for the refugees and everything. Elbab, Manbij, now Afrin. So it is a good area to send the Syrians back. Second, collect the arms. I mean, those arms you promised to collect.
That doesn't sound feasible. And give an example of Afghanistan. Once these arms go in, nobody knows where they end up.
We know
Exactly.
that. But this is the promise the United States made, and this is, you have to...
But realistically, maybe the Americans even know they can't keep this promise, Hakkı.
No, we know they cannot.
Then
We
why
know
do you
they
keep
cannot.
on asking?
So that they can start speaking as we do. I mean, honest, true to God, truth. I mean, let's deal with this issue together. I mean, it's very easy. I mean, it is very easy.
Zeynep Oktay, thank you so much, Hakkı Öcal, and we'll continue this conversation as well. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
Ever since US President Donald Trump officially recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, concerns have been growing over the viability of the peace process. But the US's tough talk has had little effect in getting concessions from the Palestinians. Turkey is one of many countries who slammed the American decision, and the government has been encouraging tourism to the Holy Land. But it hasn't been a smooth journey for everyone, as Hadil Halim reports.
Zubeyda Yavuzdemir is a woman on a mission.
When I enter Al-Aqsa, I want to look into the eyes of the occupiers and tell them, we are here.
She's part of a growing number of Turks making the trek to Jerusalem.
We must make the Turkish nation and all the Muslim world feel our existence in the Holy Lands.
Kuse and his wife are heading to the Holy City for the first time.
Interest in Jerusalem is getting stronger, especially in the last 2 years. Certain political issues increased the number of visitors. Right now, Trump's decision explains the increase.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence visited Jerusalem on Monday and said the embassy move will happen next year, ahead of schedule. Then on Thursday, Trump threatened to stop aid to the Palestinians unless they return to the negotiating table.
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has repeatedly called on Turks to embrace the Palestinian cause and protect Jerusalem. That call appears to have been answered. The head of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound says Turkish Muslims make up the largest number of visitors, 35,000 annually.
A spike which may have put Israeli police on edge. 6 Turkish tourists were detained for more than 10 hours last week after Friday prayers.
It was a psychological war. They didn't do any physical touch to us, but they shouted.
This was the photo that got them into hot water. The men are seen holding a Turkish flag and a banner of their business association.
they told us that we opened the flag and Musiat written Branda, and we say Allahu Akbar. They told that, but we accept that we opened flag, and also we opened Musiat Branda, and but we didn't say Allahu Akbar.
The businessmen have been banned from Al-Aqsa for 15 days, but the group is remaining defiant with plans to return in March. Meanwhile, the Turkish tourists we met in Istanbul made it to the old city without incident.
We need to visit as much as possible. People here just want this from us. They don't want anything else, and they don't demand any help. They just want us to be here.
This is my third visit. In order to oppose Trump's decision, I will go to Jerusalem every year. I won't eat or drink if necessary.
If her own journey inspires even one more visitor to the holy city, Yavuz will consider her mission accomplished. Adil Halim, Strait Talk, Jerusalem.
And for more on this, I'm joined by Emel Topçu. She's a lecturer at Hasan Kalyoncu University, and by Hassan Imran. He's the director of Asia Middle East Forum based in Istanbul. Thank you so much for both of you for being here. Let's begin with you, Hassan. It's not like Israel has stopped tourism from Muslim countries, have they? They still allow tourists to visit the occupied territories, visit occupied East Jerusalem and the Al-Aqsa compound.
It's not that simple. Since the very beginning of the establishment of Israel, it worked very hard to gain Muslim recognition all over the world. Tourism was one means. Like they tried to get the recognition through the Muslim tourists, normalize the relations, give them a positive image about Israel, engineer their opinion, quote unquote, to give a positive image. Yet, that was not the case for everyone. Anyone who would have, participated or who would support the people of Jerusalem, maintain their identity, maintain their legal status, etc., would face many difficulties and would face many troubles, like many Turkish tourists who were detained recently. So it's not the case. They would invite everyone to come in order to gain for themselves, in order to gain for the economy, for the legal recognition, but at the end, they would be very selective in their policy.
Emel, why is this issue, and why is it so important for Turkey and Turkey's government to engage and have Muslim engagement with these occupied territories?
Yeah, Palestine issue is very important for all over the world, for all Muslim, because especially the Jerusalem is the base for all three religions, Abrahamic religions, and Israel wants to keep this Jerusalem only for themselves. There are also Christians and Muslims. It is a holy place for all three religions. That's why it is important for us, and all one nation called Palestinian are tortured for more than 100 years there. Their land is occupied and they had to flee all over the world. This is injustice and it happens in the eye of the world. And
Hassan was one of them.
Yeah, Hassan is one of them. And they live just like an open air jail. This is injustice. We want to support them. United Nations has also declared 29th of November in 1977 the day of supporting the Palestinian, solidarity for the Palestinian.
And this is all happening after the US President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Israel. He left it ambiguous, east and west. He didn't say which one, but Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I want to bring in a statement that Trump made on Thursday, this last Thursday, and he threatened to cut off aid to Palestinians if they don't agree to peace talks with Israel. Let's take a listen to that statement.
And we give them hundreds of millions of dollars in aid and support, tremendous numbers that nobody understands. That money is on the table, and that money is not going to them unless they sit down and negotiate peace.
US President Donald Trump there threatening to cut off aid to the Palestinians. What do you make of the statement, Hassan?
This is very unfortunate, but it's nothing new from the US, unfortunately. Since the very beginning of the struggle, the US has been aligned with the Israeli side. And they tried to show themselves as a neutral broker, but they were never neutral. They were never unbiased, unfortunately. So now this statement comes as a very clear and ugly blackmailing for U.S. Foreign policy. Instead of the U.S. as a superpower is supposed to be pushing for peace in the Middle East, supposed to be turning off the fire in the Middle East. Right now, they are just fueling the Middle East struggle, fueling the Middle East conflict. Palestine has been one of the major reasons, the issue of Palestine has been one of the major reasons why the region is a mess right now. The Israeli behavior was fueling the region, was fueling the instability in the region, yet the United States, as a superpower, did not act responsibly, unfortunately.
What more can Turkey do?
Turkey has a role till now, just like a mediator. I think this is the best way to mediate between all the partners. But our heart is with Palestinian people, and we can show our solidarity with them by visiting the Jerusalem. And when the Turkish people visits there, we heard that the pressure over the Palestinian people get little bit lesser. That's why it is also important to visit the Jerusalem and show the Muslim solidarity, Muslim appearance there. And when they go there, there is also one complaint that Turkish visitors accommodate generally with the hotels run by Palestinian people. This is also a complaint by the Israelis. We want to support them economically by that way as well. And
but Emma, let me flip it around. Turkey,
Okay.
it seems, is in one corner. Even within the Muslim world, yes, there are countries like Pakistan, you've got Qatar, which has been supporting the Palestinian cause in earnest, they say. But then you have Egypt, you have Saudi Arabia, which are, it seems, not supporting or not as vocal, even though Egypt tabled the resolution that we saw at the United Nations. But then it became clear that the Egyptian state was trying to push the other side, or for the other side. So, Hassan, what do you make of this duality within the Muslim discourse on Jerusalem, on the occupied territories?
Unfortunately, the Muslim world, and particularly the states in the Middle East, are very vulnerable to pressure from the US and pressure from outside the region. You cannot explain the Saudi position, the Egyptian way of dealing and behavior towards Palestine except with this. There's nothing to push an Arab, a Muslim people, a Muslim state to support Israel publicly, to visit Israel secretly and then assign some agreements against the interest of people of Jerusalem, as was reported last year. They were supporting them in their efforts to change the identity of the city. They were supporting them in decreasing the Muslim population in Jerusalem. That cannot be explained.
I want to take a point of that. Recently, the Israeli Knesset passed a law paving the way for Jerusalem as a Jewish-only city. What would happen? What would be the Turkish reaction if that were to happen?
Yeah, this is. It is also just like a clarification or clearance. The nation now they want to send all African to the African countries. They don't want.
You're talking about 40,000 deportations
40,000
of African migrants who are illegally in Israel.
Yeah. Actually, they are not illegally in Israel. They are asylum seeker. It is their right to be there because there was problem in their countries.
I should clarify that Israel says are illegally in Israel.
Yeah, Israel says, but they are asylum seeker. No, actually, Israel doesn't say that they are asylum seeker. They are economic migrants. That's why they want to send them their countries back. But this is also illegal. If we look at the history, actually they faced almost the same problem in the history, Jewish people. What they have confronted in Germany, Holocaust, it was the terrible things in the history. They had, actually, we are expecting that they had to take lesson from the history, and with this understanding, they have to be more human against the other nations and against the other people, but they react in the way that how Nazis treated them. This is really...
they would disagree to this, by the way, and they would say this is a false comparison.
No, it is not. Actually, I was in Germany. I was in Auschwitz. I can understand their pain, and I'm really...
And also another thing, there is a distinction that is often made, that Zionism as a ideology is one thing, and the Jewish people on the other side are the Jews living in Turkey.
That is clear. That is clear. I don't want to put all the Jewish in the same top, but I criticize that the way how Israeli government deals. This is politics, and people are different. The Turkish people who visit the Jerusalem reports that the people in Jerusalem, Jewish people, are very kind. We don't have any problem with the Jewish people, but we criticize the policy of Israeli government. We have to differentiate these two things.
Hassan Imran, ML Topçu, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's all for this special edition of Straight Talk with me, Ali Mustafa. If you've got any comments or suggestions, do share them with us at #StraightTalk. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.